This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board at about 6:02 p.m. for September 9th, 2025. And if Finance would also like to call their meeting together?
Yep, call the meeting to order 6:03.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's start by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Have our small flags in front of us here, but wherever. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, do we have anyone here for Citizen Speak, open time to the public? A couple folks in the audience, if so. If you are waiting for agenda items, that's fine. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have, actually this is going to be the first of our quarterly Select Board and Finance meetings, which is great. We've been hoping to do that, and we're getting it underway. So this is the first of that, and our business tonight really revolves around various budget items, but especially the warrant for the special town meeting and a few other things. So I'm going to turn the warrant idea over to Scott. I think we have the warrant is still open. At some point we will need to close that. Do you want to do that before we discuss
Yeah,
articles?
I think if the select board closes it, and then have it as the last on the agenda.
Okay.
And then after FinCom goes through it, then select board can approve it.
Okay. All right. So I'll take a motion then to close the warrant. We have 12 articles, I believe, Scott?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a motion from select board to close the warrant.
Move to close the warrant for a special town meeting to be held September 30th, 2025.
Okay.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Consider that closed. So we will go through each of the warrant articles, and I believe the process is that FinCom needs to take the lead and do the discussion on that, and thoughts and recommendations as to whether you support or don't support that, and make that recommendation to Select Board. So I think we'll go through each of those 12 articles, if that's the way I'm understanding the process.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in the meeting, we will, on our side, vote to accept the warrant articles as discussed. Okay? So Scott?
Do you want to do the warrant articles first? Or last?
It doesn't really matter to me. What's anybody's druthers? We can take these out of order. We got lots of things.
I mean, like with the health, it might be better for last, just because like the health insurance and all that stuff.
But it's fine. Whatever you'd like to do. I mean, these are the agenda items. Yeah.
So this is our first meeting, so this is just a loose agenda. And I imagine that a lot of these topics are going to kind of veer off into other things because we have a lot to talk about. But just as a quick overview, so just, our three main accounts are capital stabilization. We have a little under $160,000 in it. Our operating stabilization, a little over $1 million. That does not include the $150,000 that we're going to be looking to transfer from it for health insurance. And then our OPEB, other post-employment benefit liability trust, is at about $570,000.
So we should look for $850,000 for the stabilization? Fine, okay.
Yep. So we're going to have a lot of upcoming debt obligations this year, especially due in FY26, but also coming up in FY27. This is just a very rough estimate of some of the things that we're going to have to look at. The biggest one is going to be our health insurance. That's going to immediately impact the town. I have the specific numbers, but it's going to cost the town about $350,000 this year. We had an 18% increase on July 1st for this upcoming budget. And then due this September for October 1st, we just got hit with a 20% mid-year rate increase. So that's going to impact the active employee portion for the town, including Norris School, about $350,000. It does not include the Hampshire Regional Assessment, which will be about $350,000 to $400,000, which we're going to be responsible for about 55%. We don't know if that is going to be proposed as a mid-year increase, or if that's going to be postponed until July 1st and tacked onto next fiscal year's assessment.
So Scott, I assume that the Hampshire Regional portion of that mid-year billing is also due, I don't know, on receipt within 30 days. So do we know if the regional district has the cash on hand to pay that and then spread it in our billings?
I don't know. They
Because
probably
it could be
do.
due to the town almost the same time as our 350,000 is due.
Well, our $350,000 is due now.
Right, but,
So,
but right,
yeah.
we're sharing the expenses, but we can only consider that spread, you know, potentially to July if we know that the school district has the funds on hand to pay theirs, because I'm assuming the timing is the same.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I think they have a little bit more flexibility than we do in
But not in,
absorbing it.
not in paying the insurance trust.
Not long term. They have a little bit more flexibility short term. So we need the money right away. And I think Hampshire Regional has a little bit more resources to be able to make up for that deficit until they can figure out if they're going to do the
Right.
mid-year assessment or.
So said differently, we're assuming they have cash reserves to pay that
Yeah.
versus, because it's not the timing of the bill, it's just the funds to outlay.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that,
Sorry, go ahead.
and that doesn't include, assuming everything stays the same with Hampshire Group Insurance Trust, that doesn't include any percentage increases for July 1st. It also doesn't include any Medicare supplemental increases. That's effective for January 1st, which is our retiree plan. There'll probably be a double-digit increase for those plans. It's not as impactful, but it'll be pretty significant. So,
One quick question on the Hampshire Regional Assessment. Am I correct in assuming that increase in assessment would have to go back to the towns to vote on it?
it would have to be approved by the town.
So that would be on our May town meeting, or?
Not quite sure. I'm not sure if Vito is going to propose that or not for the mid-year with the changes.
I mean, we don't have it on our
No,
warrant
not
now.
Yeah, not for special.
Right.
I mean, no.
Right.
So if it does, it'll probably be in a few months.
I see.
So the other increase would be if we do decide to make changes to our health insurance and leave Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. We are responsible for our run-out costs, which are the amount of money that Southampton incurs in medical costs past the time of membership. So usually with medical billing, it takes 30, 60, 90 days after the last day of membership. So basically anything that we would incur after July 1st, we would have to pay. Currently, there's about $26,000 that Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust has on hand for Southampton to pay those run-out costs, but that's not going to cover it all. So it's going to be pretty significant. I think generously, conservatively, it's probably going to be between $50,000 to $100,000 to pay those out. So.
Scott, you said they were making some changes there. You referenced the weight loss drugs at one point, that maybe they're not going to pay those in the future.
They're definitely not going to pay those starting October 1st.
So what does that do to rates? Does that actually bring them back down, or?
I don't know. The idea was that it was going to help level off the rates effective for July 1st, and obviously it didn't. So.
Yeah, because we were
Right now,
expecting
it's a
the
big
July
question mark.
increase, but we weren't expecting another one on top of the July one too, so.
I brought this up at my first finance committee meeting. I said it was 18% across the state, and you were pretty certain that our numbers were firm, but it was, this was raised many, many months ago,
Yeah.
so.
Well, we budgeted for the 18%. We didn't budget for another 20% 2 months later. So that's our challenge. And,
Yeah.
right now, we're stuck with HCGIT through this fiscal year, right? Until June.
But with that being said, with the percent of the buyout too, we have to look, is that gonna offset, if we're saving a ton of money, that the buyout percentage is worth it, but
Right.
it
no,
should be explored.
There's options to look
Right.
at. Yeah, we'll get into that, I think, later on. But just to say that this is, we can't move out of it even if we want to this fiscal year, is my understanding. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We also have the highway heating coming up that we have to borrow. It's currently out to bid. That's going to be about $50,000 that we're going to have to go in for our debt service. The other issue is our COVID-19 funds through the the CARES Act, so we were allowed to deficit spend that $130,000 4 or 5 years ago. The DLS is requiring us to correct that negative balance for all municipalities that may have it, so we're going to have to come up with that against our free cash this year. We have police negotiations that are ongoing, non-step increases in COLAs for our union members after completing the salary study and trying to make progress on that. Our central office payments, we owe $150,000 again this year from our free cash amount. That will go on to the central office payments. We have a grant-funded position that will be ending this year. And we also have about unexpected transportation costs, about $35,000 to one of the vocational schools that I'm just waiting for the final contract for. That was above and beyond what we had expected.
Just to comment on the COVID-19 funds, because that occurred before you were even here, Scott. The CARES money, Southampton received funds from the government in, I forget, 2 or 3 different, two tranches if I'm not mistaken, and it was allocated out for all sorts of things, for, you know, personal protection equipment and various equipment for fire and police and all the departments in town, etc. And a lot of that was a combination of funding, some of which was from FEMA. FEMA had a certain percentage they were going to reimburse. That percentage changed later on in terms of the amount that the town would have to pay versus the amount FEMA was going to reimburse. And then I believe some of the actual things that we had put on there and purchased for the departments was then turned down by FEMA, if I'm not mistaken. So that's where that came from. And we've been allowed to carry it, but it needs to get paid, so.
And then some other costs to keep in mind that are upcoming. Our shared dispatch, we did receive a $175,000 grant. That will be slowly stepping down year by year after this fiscal year. So in 2 years, I think, Chief, it's 25% it gets reduced by, or $25,000?
Yes, yes.
So, and that's going to continue over the next 5 to 10 years, and it'll step down. So that's $175,000 a year obligation.
It's 100%.
Okay, 100%. So we got to keep that in mind. We have the Southampton Easthampton Bridge. We have to start working on that. We don't know how much that is going to cost. We're in a little bit of a tricky situation.
Upper Meadow Road.
Yeah.
Right as you go up toward Glendale Road in Easthampton, there's a bridge that's been, yeah, it's single lane now. It's been
Does that mean
flagged
we
by-
confirmed it's on our
A
side? of the
long
town
ways
line?
from this.
Depends who we ask. If you ask Easthampton or Southampton, I think we have differing points of view.
Middle of the river somewhere.
So it's a little bit of a tricky legal situation that dates back 150 years. So if we have a metal detector and some wading boots, I need to get into the river and find the marker that they determined in 1846.
I have some waiting boots. It seems like the one-way bridge seems to be working at the moment.
It needs to be addressed, but yeah. Public safety building costs, depending on what happens later on in this month, there could be, potential additional costs related to the feasibility study or how we move forward. And then council on aging costs, which with the new building, I mean, we currently, operational costs, if you look, 2 or 3 years down the road, I would probably say apples to apples, the closest thing that we have in Southampton is our standalone library, which is about $40,000 operational cost per year. So at a minimum, I think it would be $50,000 to $60,000. When you take custodial, heating, everyday supplies, things like that. So that's to be determined though. Looking ahead to FY27, so if you look at our historical levy limit increases, both with Prop 2.5 and new growth, we're a little bit over approaching $600,000. If that held true, I mean, our health, if we did nothing with health insurance, that alone would eat up pretty much any increases this year in our levy limit and new growth. And anecdotally, talking to the assessor and the building inspector, looking at building permits, it looks like new growth is going to be slowing down this year. So I don't think we can rely on another $200,000 plus. The other thing is our ambulance fees, though, which go back to the general fund, are above 100 calls for this calendar year, so there's a little bit more revenue on that.
Is there any state relief? Because I know other cities and towns, like, I don't know, VLIS or our local representatives, if there's anything, you know what I'm saying, if there's any more relief that we can try to work with them on.
Not that we can count on.
Okay.
So, on the real estate assessments, do you know where, property reassessments are? Like, what kind of cycle is the assessor's office working on?
I'm gonna have to double check that with Dave, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Let's see here. So, I mean, ultimately, we're approaching a structural deficit. A lot of our expenses are increasing faster than our revenue. Health insurance, which is obviously our single largest line item other than schools, has increased 38% in 4 months. Cost for vocational transportation, those are increasing at a higher rate. Maintenance is getting more expensive. We have union contracts that we have to negotiate. We have personnel costs we have to keep up on. And then obviously Proposition 2.5, it restricts our increases, to the levy limit without voter approval. So just quickly, our audit status, I forwarded you the latest FY23, so that is almost ready to have them come in and do a proposal. We have to do a few more steps on FY23. FY24 is about 30% done. Bradley and our assessors have done a lot of the uploading of what's available already for information. The other thing is I've uploaded some stuff as well. The main portion of it's going to be with the treasurer, and with Megan being still relatively new and part-time, getting her feet wet and then learning a lot of the other stuff that she's kind of behind on because of the transition, and a lot of things that need to be updated. It's going to be a little while longer to hopefully get as much as we can for FY24 done.
So FY23, we'd have them come in and do a presentation to us about their findings.
Exactly.
Probably October?
Hopefully. It's pretty much done except for some of the stuff that we have to do.
So Scott, we haven't been able to get a bond rating because our statements have been so late. So when does 24 have to be done for us to be able to go to the rating agencies and say we're caught up?
We should be all set with 23 to be able to get that.
Okay, so once 23 is completed, then we can go to the rating agency and...
We should be able to, yep.
So you're gonna ask that?
Yeah, I was. It would be interesting to see if bond council agrees with that conclusion. Or if we're looking at kind of short-term borrowings and rolling those over for an extended period of time, especially since we're asking, or potentially asking the town to authorize new borrowing for a senior center.
Yeah.
It's concerning.
So our free cash status, we're hoping to get it done by mid-December. Bradley, I don't know if you want to just talk about some of the next steps really quickly, what we have to do to complete free cash.
Tom and I in the accounting office are about to post the final revenue for fiscal year 25, which is June. I informed Megan that we have like local aid payments that the state comes in, and it's on a website that we need to post, and it was not available yet, so she's working on that. Once that's ready, we can post all of fiscal year 25's revenue. The main things I need to do with her also are cash reconciliations and receivable reconciliations, which we don't have much progress on. And when Jen was here, she wanted to, before she left, reconcile the first month of July of 2024, and we were off $175,000 because of me using Vadar for the first time. We had missed some tax posting, what she had on the bank versus what I had on my GL. So we need to fix that before we move on to the next month. So we're not even a single month of cash reconciliation in fiscal year 25. And after that, it's reconciling accounts with the school. It's just making sure that the grants are have no deficits as best as possible to reduce the reduction of free cash. Then I close the books, I report to the state, and they give us a free cash number.
Have the schools been accommodating?
They have given me transfer requests between accounts. I'll have to reach out to them because I have some questions. They weren't very clear on what accounts they wanted to move. they were just saying general fund account to grant account. But they have given me some, keep in contact with them.
So do we think mid-December is a real date, or are we thinking 26? Because that's a lot of work.
I know. If Megan can help, I'm not saying like she's slowing me down, it's just, she has a lot to catch up on, and it always could be a surprise. Someone leaves, and then there's a big hole, and we have to fill it, and then
I
create something
know,
new.
turnover is the
But
worst.
I'm hopeful and optimistic that December versus closing in May, which is right before our town meeting. So
Hey, as long as we get that Schedule A and we get it certified. So my municipality did not get our free cash certified this year yet, so I know the opposite end of the spectrum, so.
So just looking forward to FY27 and the guidelines, I think this year the FinCom and Select Board need to institute some pretty significant guidelines of what people can and can't budget for, especially when we're going into negotiations on the school side, which is obviously our biggest part of personnel costs. But looking at proposed budgets, last Select Board meeting, John talked about over across the board cuts. I'm not a fan of that. If it does come to that, I think taking 10% off of the town clerk budget versus 10% off of DPW is two very different things. So I think I would just recommend targeted changes if and when we do have to get to that point. But I think with the proposed budgets, I think we would definitely start with the level services budget, which is maintaining what we currently have. It does mean that there will be an increase to maintain those services. I mean, everything from fuel to health insurance is going up. The other part is level funded, which is basically whatever funding that you have now carries over with no increases, and that would essentially be a cut. We would have to also look at what it would be to maintain continued progress with an override, and then what it would be without an override. So that would be something less than level funded or level service budgets. So I think it's important to communicate, especially with the schools at this time in Hampshire Regional, about what we might expect for increases without an override and then with an override.
So, Scott, are there other options we should be considering, right? This is a pretty big fiscal cliff, especially when you look at the mid-year increase, right, on the insurance is eating up, what, $500,000?
Mm-hmm.
If you take that out to a whole fiscal year, what is that, $1.5 million that we're potentially, that's being consumed not by services, but just by employee benefits?
Mm-hmm. About 350,000, so about $500,000.
And we've seen the town, potentially has, the voters have, less of an appetite for funding overrides, right? We just took a pretty sizable hit at the school.
Mm-hmm.
So even level funded isn't level funded for the school, right? It is year to year, but
right.
They're significantly down. They lost a kindergarten teacher, they lost, an activity for the students, art got cut, a bunch of other positions were eliminated. So, if we're looking at level services or, targeted cuts, is there also an option to consider, whether there's more cost sharing with surrounding towns, whether there's some, looking across like districting of services, I think we really need to consider all the options of bringing out, additional savings. Like we talked about the ambulance receipts, but if I'm not wrong, I believe overall, if you add up the ambulance receipts and then the cost of that service, right, I think it's an overall spend for the town.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I'm not proposing this, but is an option, right? Looking at private services to replace that type of service, right? I want to make sure that we're considering all the potential options here.
I think regionalization is an option. The things against that are, one, it takes time. Number two, it takes cooperation. We also have to be careful because if we start looking at other towns like Westfield, Easthampton, Northampton, Holyoke, they generally pay more than us. So, for example, if we were going to consolidate with the widget department, just whatever, they're paying maybe 10 or 20% more. So they're gonna add that on and then add type of administrative fees. We saw that with the grant with the fire department, so we cooperated, we had a grant with Easthampton to do fire service inspections for about a year. It was great when the grant was there, but when the grant expired and they approached us to continue with that, it was significantly more than what we charge for inspections, so we'd be running another deficit on that. So it's a little bit of a give and take. You know, the dispatch I think is working. I know that the chief, you know, I don't know if you want to chime in on that. Sometimes regionalization is great, sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, if there's a grant involved, it can help kind of smooth that out, but eventually we're going to have to be paying for it. And the reality is, you know, as great neighbors as we are, Westfield and Easthampton, they're not going to give us a discount. They're definitely going to charge us for any type of funds that they can get from us.
Just to piggyback on your point though, so Holyoke, we do, our ambulance is private. We did an RFP where companies submit, it's a no consideration contract. They make their money from the billing of the Medicaid, of the private ambulance rides and things like that. But to your point, Scott, without a feasibility study done to fund it, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to have an apples to apples comparison. And we just did a feasibility study to privatize ours, to bring it back to the fire department, to offer good jobs with pension and benefits and other things to help the community. So I can argue both points. It's a really good thing. And a small town though, there could be benefits to privatizing and having a no consideration contract where it comes off of the taxpayers. So, but without money to do a feasibility study, there's no data to support it. So.
I will say that, you know, Chief Fasoli's done a really great job in trying to get the ambulance financial part, you know, straightened out. For example, he found $200,000 in ambulance billing that hadn't been collected over the last 5 to 10 years. We were able to bring in a collections agency, so we're looking back to collect at least that first $100,000 and taking a percentage of that. So we haven't been exactly the model for ambulance billing over the last decade, which does hurt us.
Yeah, in terms of the timing, right, I understand that a lot of these things take, you know, long-term planning, but I think it's fair to assume that this is a fiscal, you know, problem that's going to continue and if not get worse, right? If you look at the tax base and we look at, you know, the increases and the restrictions under Prop 2.5, we should be considering long-term, you know, potential fixes, right? Even if they're not going to kick in for this year.
Scott, real estate, takings and condemnations, it may be small numbers, but it's categorized in C. Is there anything that you're anticipating to help with free cash in the prior years or in coming months?
I don't think that we're looking at any takings in the near future. I talked to Jen about it a few months ago before she left, and she didn't have any on the radar. I'll talk to Megan again, but I don't think we're at that point for a lot of things.
I thought we were. Okay.
Condemnations, we are. There's a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're looking at some of that,
But then we're leaning properties, and it's not necessarily a collection. It's a municipal lien until the property is conveyed. We don't collect anything. So, but it is at least a solution with a potential.
Right.
So I've been working on the FY27 capital plan. I asked all the departments to get their requests in. I'm actually the latest one. I haven't been able to do the town hall one yet. I expect. If you look at all the leaks and all the changes, there's quite a few things that we need to start looking at to maintain town hall.
Especially if you're going to make this a new senior center.
And I just want to bring up a point about capital. If we don't start capital planning in 10 years, this same budgetary things, we're going to be at the same table with a plethora of town buildings that have problems. So capital planning, when you're trying to balance a budget, it's always, the roof can wait another year, but it's huge money the more we push it off.
So I did ask, so we're having a slightly new form for at least the inventory. The request will still be the same, but this allows me to at least get everything together. And give you a quick example. I'll put the police on spot. So at least, we're able to do a little bit more of a justification and plan things out a little bit more, try to find different funding sources, and I'm going to put this all together into a funding book, capital plan book. I've just been inputting numbers so it doesn't look fancy or anything like that, but if you start looking at all of our capital costs over the main departments, Norris, police, fire, library, DPW, highway, and library department excluding town hall because I'm late on it. If you look at the first 5 years, if everything was funded as requested, the average would be about $1 million. It does drop off a little bit in the future. That's why it's a little bit more tricky to do a 10-year capital plan because if we knew that what we were paying for vehicles 5 years ago, what we were paying now, I think we'd look at us and say they're crazy. But yeah, at least looking at 5 years, I think it's a little bit more reasonable, and that's really the target. And then we just look at the longer term goals over the next 10 years.
So what's going to be different though? Because each of the departments has had their own capital plan all along, right? But you're trying to consolidate it into one master plan?
So the problem with the way that we've been funding capital projects is we've been using a percentage of free cash over these years. Now, if we don't have a lot of free cash and we're reserving 30% for capital projects, we're never going to be able to pay for any of these larger items. We might be able to do smaller and medium ones, but a new ambulance, fire truck, cruisers, those larger items that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, we're never going to be able to actually fund them through the current structure. It's not reliable, so we can't borrow against that. So if you're going to do a 5 or 7 year short-term borrowing for a new ambulance, we won't be able to borrow against that because we don't know if free cash will be available or not and how much it's going to be. For example, this year we're probably not going to have much free cash. The other problem is, looking for those large debt exclusions to the voters every 5 or 10 years. Again, those are difficult to plan. Asking for $1 million here or there every 10 years, it's kind of a flip of a coin. It's impossible to plan for, and they're really just too infrequent. So we need a consistent funding source that's dedicated every year that we can set aside and fund these, medium capital projects, but also borrow for the larger ones. If you look at some of the ways that we can do that, if we do an override similar to what Belchertown did this year, so Belchertown requested $500,000 in their override as part of their capital plan. Ours would probably be about $250,000 to $350,000 every year that we would set aside just for capital projects. I know that there's been some issues about asking for an override and then saying, we're going to divert that money. Well, the idea behind a capital plan is to say, this is our schedule for the next 10 years. This is how we're going to borrow for these things. You can see the $250,000 or $350,000 in the budget every single year, and you can see that appropriated against the debt. The transparency is what really matters. So if the public knows this and they see next year where we have a specific capital plan part in our budget and that $350,000 is missing, they have a right to complain and say, okay, well, where'd that money go? So this is money that we're going to have to be fiscally responsible for to set aside to make sure that if we do borrow against it, for at least some of it, that's going to be there and available.
Can you bring back up, please, Scott, the capital plan, your consolidated? So how do we fill in the gaps between that, proposed, standing override and the $1 million a year average?
We're going to have to spread some things out. We're going to have to eliminate some other things that we might have to live with a little bit more. Some things we might be able to use CPC funding, like for the library. The carpets for the library might be eligible for that. There can be grant funding for that type of things. I know the chief's been great with getting cruiser line items from the state for some of the things. So will it 100% be from this funding? No. So this is just something that we can start looking at larger items for. It won't solve 100% of our problem, and a lot of things we'll still have to probably defer. But we can at least start ticking things off. Realistically, it might be 10 or 15 years before we get fully caught up. An ambulance borrowed over 5 years is about $500,000, so out of that 250 to 350, we're gonna have to take $100,000 every year out of that just to borrow for an ambulance. And there's also some other pretty big ticket items. If you look at highway, you know, Randall put everything a little bit closer to FY27 when he requested everything. I know he's been behind for the last 5 years, not being properly funded. I did spread it out a little bit further, but most of his things were all in year one. But you have $300,000 for street sweeper, $225,000 for a roadside mower, another dump truck, $400,000, a loader for $270,000. So those are some pretty significant things. But I think if we can spread it out, borrowing's not the best. I would love to pay cash for everything, but realistically, I don't think that's possible. We're going to have to borrow for something. So if we maybe put half of that money, up to $200,000 over 5 years, and borrow for some things and then pay cash for others, that might be more of an option. You know, a zero turn at $25,000. Looking at Norris's, you know, $8,000, and carpet. You know, that could come into it. You know, the laptops we might be able to spread over 3 years, so it's $10,000 a year. Same thing with the teacher laptops, we might be able to spread that out. Again, these are just what the requests were in the years, and in reality, it's not going to end up that way.
So for these larger ticket items, you're really asking for, it's really two steps with the voters, right? One is approving this, you know, capital funding plan as an override, but then also we're going to have to go to the voters for all of the, you know, the borrowings as well.
Yeah, it would have to be a town meeting.
Which would be 600,000 a year.
I'm gonna have to see how we can stretch things out a little bit more. Like the ambulance, we would have to order this year, but that's not gonna hit for 2 years because we won't actually get delivery for, you know, at least 2 to 3 years. So that will give us a little bit of a leeway to get some of the other smaller projects done.
Same with that dump truck that was on there. It would be the same process. We'd order it, wouldn't come in for years.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, we might overlap some things so that, you know, we might have spikes with the borrowing. We're still gonna have our regular capital fund. The problem is we've taken so much from our free cash and not putting it to our stabilization. Our stabilization is really low at only 5%. You know, first time we've ever been over $1 million. But the basic, the best practice is to have at least a 10% stabilization fund, and we're nowhere near that.
And as a result, I think on capital, we've been able to do small amounts of capital approvals. So the capital requests have all been that smaller dollar amount. I mean, 50,000 or less for the most part. And we don't ever get around to the street sweepers or whatever else. We just have not focused on that. Haven't been able to budget correctly for it and figure out how to plan for it. So this might get us farther down the road, at least, in terms of looking at it long term and not just saying, okay, we've got this amount of money, we're just going to spend out 50% of that for capital this year, and it, you know, it gets us A, B, C, and D, but F has to wait yet another year. So that's been kind of our dilemma, is that we never get around to funding a big ticket item. Rarely get around to it, because we just haven't had the capital money put aside.
I mean, and I also think looking at Norris, we need to kind of decide, you know, do we want to continue with some costs, or do we want to start looking at potentially getting on the list for school building and looking at rehabilitation costs? You know, it's going to be an 8 to 10 year project for that. And how much, you know, is that something we want to pursue in the next maybe 10 or 15 years to get on that, you know, school building?
MSBA.
MSBA.
Yes, it would be a school building project, elementary school, and they'd probably look to us to do a model elementary school, and there's more funding options if we would sign up to do a model.
Right. So, I mean, is that something an option? Like, do we want to spend $300,000 on the air conditioner in 2 years, when in 10 years we might be looking at renovating?
But if you get onto that list, they provide money for the feasibility and the schematic design before you get to that building level, so it's a whole package. So
Exactly.
So you're talking about renovating, or you're talking about a new building?
Either or. I think
We still only get a certain percentage from the state for schools, right?
Right.
You get 30%, 40% or something?
Yeah, the renovation would probably be more likely, but we still have to plan it out.
But they look at our current status, like what we have in our reserve, what we have in our accounts, and they make a determination as to whether or not the town of Southampton is eligible to be a participant in the MSBA, either a school building where they would make a recommendation based off of either, first would come a feasibility study and then schematic design. And in that feasibility study, a recommendation would come forward as to if they think that a new school would be the most bang for the buck, and then we'd be eligible for up to a 50 to 80% reimbursement if we get deemed an eligible community. If not, they would make recommendations like for capital. The whole roof needs to be redone and other things, and that might be a $10 million project with $3 or $4 million reimbursable. So
But that's a long process.
it is a very long
Yeah.
process, but I think we should get in the pipeline.
Exactly.
We have
So-
nothing to lose and everything to gain.
So we kind of have to balance, what are we going to do with the Norris building, short term versus long term. So looking forward to the budget calendar, just some suggestions. I think September is, we're just trying to get our feet underneath ourselves right now for FY26. But I'd like to confirm, the budget calendar by October. Do some of the budget updates to our boards and committees to kind of give an overview of where we are with that. I do think that we need to confirm budget guidelines probably by the end of October, just because of the ongoing negotiations with other unions, as well as look at potential COLA changes for our non-union personnel. Right now, the only contracts that are out there are police and our Norris School union. November, we have our tax class hearing. We should do our budget goals, set our deadlines, have our budget workshops, start the process for capital requests, hopefully I'll have at least a plan together, and then we can kind of fine tune that once I have everything into a manageable state where people can actually see all the numbers. Start looking at that, what it's actually going to cost, what we can afford with and without override. And then this December, have the first budget request due. I'm going to get back onto doing an actual budget book this year again, continue with our next quarterly finance meeting, and then that leads into January with the individual hearings. I'll meet with each department again to go through everything, as well as do the budget presentations to FinCom and the Select Board. Kind of left March open, and then February open, then March would be have a budget first draft at least finalized. I would definitely encourage the schools to be more proactive this year to get into their budgets earlier. I think that's the biggest thing, and that kind of threw us off last year. So even though the bylaw allows them to submit the budget later, there's nothing that prohibits them from doing it earlier. So I think we need to let the schools know earlier would be best.
But black box is bad news. I mean, benefits are a complete catastrophe out of our hands. But the black box that has been the regional school administration just brings more bad news.
So that brings us to the health insurance. Very well timed. We were approaching a cliff anyways, and health insurance is essentially what is pushing us over it. We had a couple of years left if it wasn't for this massive increase. So just to put into perspective, our September bill was $188,000 for health insurance active employees. I just got the October bill in a few hours ago. It's $227,000. So $40,000 per month. We have 9 months left in the fiscal year. It comes out to about $350,000. So we did get the 18% increase. We're dealing with the 20% mid-year increase as well. So I mentioned it before. Those are just, the statistics right now, what we're dealing with. There are some pretty significant obstacles to make changes in health insurance. The first and foremost is it takes a long time to make changes. Months and months and months, sometimes up to a year, to do anything with the unions. It is a required topic of bargaining. The other thing is, if we are going to look at alternatives other than the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust, outside of going to the GIC, wherever we go, it's going to be claims driven. If you go out for your car insurance and you have a lot of speeding tickets and stop sign violations, sorry chief, I don't want to, I'm clean, I don't have any, but your insurance is going to go up. It's the same thing with health insurance. If we have a lot of high-risk cases, a lot of prescriptions, a lot of large claims, if we go out to the market, then we're going to get charged basically what we're going to get charged.
Have we explored the GIC, or that's just not the?
That's the next slide.
Okay.
So we have a lack of, the other thing that's going against us is we have a lack of notification in time. We just can't do anything this fiscal year reasonable. And then we also have the run-out costs of leaving the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust, which would be, depending on what the claims are, if we're above water, then it makes sense to leave. If we're below water and it's costing us more than what we pay out in premiums, then that limits what our options are going to be. We may have to stay in the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust or the GIC, neither of which evaluate based on claims of the individual organization.
The mid-year increase, what was the timing? When did we receive that?
Late August.
Late August.
Mid to late August. And it's effective for September billing. So it was a very, there are a lot of upset municipalities. There's about 70 groups that are covered under the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. Realistically, so we're looking at July 1st for any changes to be made. I don't see the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust as a long-term option. For their basic plan design, it takes so much for, when I was part of West Suburban, which we had maybe about 15 communities, they're planning 70, to get a vote of 70 communities to actually make substantial changes to plan design is going to be near impossible. I mean, we haven't had real plan design in decades for Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. Then we have to negotiate that with our individual unions. They are introducing some other plans, some high deductible plans. My experience is no one will go into those unless there's a significant incentive or disincentive to get into, to leave the other plans. So it takes a much bigger push to get people into those high deductible plans to actually evaluate it than it is just to offer them. So I'm not very optimistic on that. I think we do need to investigate joining the GIC, which is the Group Insurance Commission. It is the group that covers all state employees in 50+ municipalities. With that, there are some ways that we can go into it. We would need to alert the GIC that the town of Southampton is entering it by December 1st, so there are some timing concerns with that. So we would have to start negotiations with our unions sooner than later. If negotiations break down, it goes before an independent body, and as long as there's savings, they will allow the town to move into the GIC regardless of what the union agreement is. I would like to try to avoid that. I think that there are a lot of ways that we can share the costs with the employees. I mean, I think if you look right now of our contribution level, 70-30, on what we're paying the premiums for the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust versus if we were to move everyone into Health New England, it would save the town maybe between $300,000 and $350,000, which is pretty significant. We do have to back out about 25% required savings that we would have to give it to the employees, as well as the Hampshire County Group Insurance funds that we would require to leave. So
The first year could be a wash, but then moving forward.
we don't know what GIC is going to look at next year. This year they were billed out by $380 million. I don't know if I have no idea if there's going to be pressure on the state legislature for them to make plan design changes or not. So that's kind of up in the air. There are things that we could do regardless of what, regardless of where we go, whether it's GIC or we go fully funded ourselves. But things like, putting in a flexible spending account for employees and maybe taking some money and jump starting it, matching $250 so they get $500, that would take care of a lot of the different deductibles that they would have to pay. It also can help guide them into looking at how they actually manage their health insurance costs a little bit more appropriately.
Would that be a flex spending or would that be like an HSA arrangement?
It would be flex spending, since we probably wouldn't be able to get to the high deductible plans for the HSA yet. Maybe, but I don't think GIC offers any HSA eligible plans. But eventually, we are looking.
They do. We were,
Oh, do they?
we were in the GIC and we just went self-funded.
Okay.
So we were GIC, so when I first started there, my insurance was through GIC and there was different plans you can choose and there was all of that, so.
Yeah. So we have to evaluate our claims. Dowd Insurance is volunteering to give us our basic data. So they've got all the claims data. They're going to tell us in the next couple of weeks, are we above or below water? And they'll even get us some quotes for, Health New England. There's really not that many insurers in Massachusetts anymore. I mean, we have Health New England, Harvard Pilgrim, and Tufts. They combined for called Point 32. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then all the other national ones, United. Those aren't really options. So there's really only a couple options. There is Maya as well, which is another group that deals exclusively with Blue Cross Blue Shield, but the problem is that's claims. So even though they're a group, they evaluate each organization based on claims. So again, it goes back to what our actual claims data is.
One more insurance question. Have we considered how this increase in rates is going to impact the unfunded OPEB liability? Because we're kind of paying as we go for retirees currently, but we have, if you look out multiple years, I wonder if there's kind of a lag here where we're also going to see a big increase in what we have to put towards OPEB that we haven't caught up to yet.
Yep. Haven't gotten that far yet, but yeah, it's going to impact that. I don't know yet, but that's a good point. So we did have I did request the DLS, the Department of Labor Service, Division of Local Services. They offer a team to come out to individual municipalities to do a study. They've reviewed us and they've actually said that they're going to come out in person and start looking at everything more in depth to get us straightened out. And this was kind of triggered by the transition in the Treasurer's office. I think it was a good time to look at how things are processed, as well as long-term goals for that department. The Treasurer Collector is really the heart of all of our financial systems. It collects everything, keeps track of all of our funds, it does the borrowing, sends out the tax and water bills. If that's not operating efficiently, nothing else can, because everything is received through there and everything leaves through there. So there is some good.
They'll do a formal report and make recommendations. And back to your point about financial policies and things, I would make the recommendation to wait for their report to come out, because their report's going to say all that. We should have financial policies for each department, etc. So then we could take that report and align our priorities, and then they're happy with us.
So they are skipping the report.
They're not gonna.
They are going to give us bullet points to enact faster.
Okay.
So traditionally they would do a report. They want to streamline it as much as possible.
But that piggybacks to one of your first slides, that we as a body could take their bullet points and try to align the things you're asking from us.
So we've met with them the first time. Some of the stuff that came out of it was how we relate to North School and Hampshire Regional Central Office. So we're going to be having a joint meeting with Central Office, North School, and our financial team on September 24th. We've already met with the superintendent and the business administrator to start setting some goals on streamlining things. So for example, with the way that we do payroll is, and this is even touching accruals, but North School collects all the information, they generate it, put it into a spreadsheet. After they collect it from everyone writing it, then they send that to central office. They then take that and they enter that into their own system. And then they take that, print it out, and they send it to Angie down in Treasurer's office, and then she manually enters that into Harper's payroll. So there's 3 different operations of entering payroll, 3 different systems. So the idea is to get everyone onto Harper's online, so everything is
uploaded.
One system, so everything is pre-filled out. North School and the highway and the police and everyone, they would enter it electronically. That would just send it to the department heads for approval. They electronically approve it, review it. That automatically sends it to our treasurer department. So Angie and Megan would look at it, approve it, and then it would automatically generate the payroll. And then whatever reports that central office would need, we can just generate from that, and hopefully we can coordinate Harper's, and we believe it can, to communicate with their system of infinite vision. So there's some streamlining there, and that would also go to accruals. So right now Norris manages their own accruals for sick, vacation, and personal time. It's not reflected onto Harper's payroll, so that would be incorporated too. And we agreed that we would look at January, because it's the start of the new calendar year for these types of changes. So Superintendent and Don have been really proactive on that, and they're looking at any way that they can change to get more efficient. So, but it's going to take a while. It's going to take a couple of years, and that's not even talking about how we purchase things, which is a whole nother process on how we generate checks. So,
But still, I mean, just as you just described that set of transactions, I mean, touching the same piece of paper for this 3 different times in 3 different systems, I mean, how can there not possibly be errors? I mean,
there are.
There's got to be. I mean, you just can't control for that when you've got so many, ways to put that in. So the more we could try to automate that, that sounds like a win-win situation.
So DLS is going to be coming out regularly and scheduling visits, so it's going to be a multi-month process, and they're going to give us the bullet points for us to start working on immediately.
And will you share that with this group or just the select board?
Oh, everyone, it'll be
Okay.
public, yeah, absolutely. Yep. So next up is special town meeting. Let's make sure everyone has these. Everyone has the warrants.
Before you start on the senior center, so my senior center director in Holyoke, Neve. So our senior center in Holyoke is our newest building, and our director came in 2 years post-build. So I was talking about some of the contention here in the community with the senior center, and that, we need to build one. She offers, if it's of interest, to make a presentation about becoming a director, and we're probably one of the busiest ones in Western Mass. Holyoke has an amazing senior center operation, and talk about some of the pros and cons, and because we have these big hopes, but what really makes sense, and some of the things that they built in Holyoke that she would have said it was a total waste of money. And it was things that was important to residents and things like that. So sometimes it is nice to hear from the professionals that work in the weeds. So I just wanted to throw that out there, Scott, and I can make that introduction between you and Neve, but she's very good. She has a lot of knowledge. South Hadley's been trying to poach her for 5 years. She's amazing, but she loves her senior center. She has a beautiful building, and she had some very valuable insight about, again, post. She came in 2 years after this beautiful building, and there's a lot of wasted space, a lot of things that she could have trimmed down had she been on the process. And since this is kind of a hot topic now, I just thought it was a nice, we're neighboring communities, and she's wonderful. So yeah. I wanted to, if I can make that introduction, or if you want to explore it, but
yeah.
I did tell her we had this meeting, and I would throw it out there.
No, I think that would be great, and I'll bring Kate along too.
Awesome.
I think they're just pretty good collaboration, I think, with the senior centers in Western Mass.
It's an amazing program, and I worked in Ludlow for a little while. I want to talk about another amazing senior center, just 2 beautiful operations, and it would be nice to bring something, here for our residents, because what we hear is that they pay taxes here for so long, and they look for retirement and something, and
So,
love to make it happen. All of us would.
so the borrowing, so the total project cost is different from what we're going to be borrowing for, as mentioned before. So the total project cost is, excuse me for a moment, make sure we get it right.
You have it on the first page.
14.170, so $14,170,000. Of course, I'm rounding a little bit. I can get into the cents, but that just screws everything up. So I'm trying to, just simplify things at this point. With that in mind, so that would be the total cost. That would include construction costs as well as other incidentals, design, architectural, engineering, OPM, fixtures and furniture, permitting, legal, all that stuff. So the quote soft costs. So the out the door price is the $14,170. We have a very generous donation from the Red Parsons estate. It's currently at about $2.46 million. I deducted 2.2 from the total project cost to borrow for, just because over the next couple of years, if this project moves forward, there's going to be cost involved. And, you know, Holyoke and Western.
Change orders, there's all that.
There's a lot of those departments can absorb some like the financial costs, like, you know, survey fees and engineering stuff. And, you know, in Southampton, we don't have that flexibility to do that. You know, even the mowing of the Zero College Highway, that's going to cost Randall $5,000 out of his budget that was unplanned for. So we just don't have that flexibility. So that $240,000 is going to be at least helpful to have on hand in case we do need that.
Yeah, it's contingencies. Any big project carries
Well,
10%
liquidity, because the
contingency.
rest of it's commission.
Right. And if that's not used, then that would just go back to the amount that we would borrow. So whatever we don't borrow against or don't use from the gift would just be deducted by the amount that we borrow. So, you know, that should be enough to at least get us through for some of the basic, the stuff to get the project moving.
So I'm going to come at it from a different direction. With all the issues that the town's having, I think this is not something we should pursue. You know, $12 million for a new building. First, the amount is out of control. I saw Brad Pitt bought a house in Hollywood Hills, a mansion for $12 million. 8 bedrooms, 6 baths, and you know, the amount is just way too much. And we have all these different other areas that need help. And you know, I'm sorry to say this, but personally, I think a senior center should be really low on our priorities. I mean, it's for a subset of our population. I mean, they don't need a fancy building. It's just getting together and having some programming. And to think about $12 million when we can't even afford to pay insurance for our employees, I just think we shouldn't be thinking about it.
I'm not saying it's high on my priority list either. I'm just saying it's a tempo in the town right now.
I mean, it's nice that my in-laws go to the Holyoke.
Yes, it's beautiful there.
But, you know, the other thing I have a problem with too is, you know, a lot of the services are available in the private sector. You know, I don't like the idea of spending money and serving meals to compete with restaurants or to have a health club where people can go to a health club. People, not everyone who's old in Southampton is poor. I mean, it's not means tested. So you've got these, you know, fairly well-off people that have a nice little club to go to that can work out and eat. And it just doesn't seem appropriate to me that we would push something like this.
Well, I think there will be more information that people need to be listening to. There's an open house coming up on the 16th. So the public is invited to that at the Senior Center, and then tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning, I believe it is, they're having the Senior Center Building Committee is going to be there to answer questions and talk about what the ideas are right now. But this came from a feasibility study. The feasibility study is 2 years old now. And so the feasibility study's been done, but again, like with the public safety building, those are the conceptual plans of, you know, the vision of what could be. Until you can get the project manager and architect on board, you can't even begin to look at reducing costs, cutting square footage, changing the size of a room, combining rooms. That's what the architect phase does. And unless we can have the money to do that, these things die on the vine completely, no matter what.
This vote is for all the money.
It is, because we can use the estate money to cover the architect and the project manager. But why would we take that, not knowing if we could fund the entire building? The point too is that all these things take time. None of this would even be borrowed before 2027. And you don't borrow 12 million all at once. So there's, you know, we just got to get some clarity here about sticker shock and what people are assuming happens. So this is the absolute maximum.
How do you manage that?
This is the absolute maximum that can be borrowed. There is no more. This is it. That's what the town is asking. It would be asked to borrow, and no more than that is possible to borrow when we go out for borrowing. And again, none of that, given the way we've done past projects in town, I think 2027 would be the earliest that we would borrow, but it would allow us now, soon, to be able to engage, hire out, recruit for, put out an RFP, get the project manager, get the architectural firm on board, and work over the next year to look at how to reduce costs, how to modify rooms, how to figure out what's really necessary and keep the costs down. It would allow for grant raising, fundraising rather, and going out for grants as well. So all this time is is what other things need to happen before we even get to the borrowing part.
You're still asking for $12 million.
Yeah,
True.
I would say
So-
even with, you know, this overall concept that, you know, the project manager and the architects could whittle this down, we're still looking at a sizable addition, right, to the outlays that the town needs to make. And I think, you know, Reggie, I'm kind of in agreement, right? If you look at, maybe not even just, you know, services that are available, you know, privately, but if you look at the surrounding communities, the Easthampton, you know, Senior Center is open to all. So we're looking at a big outlay for the town when we have this looming fiscal cliff that's going to be perpetual. We have a school that its funding is cut and is not keeping pace with surrounding communities. And, you know, why are we asking for this? One of the reasons, right, is to avoid the 10-minute drive down College High, or, you know, down into Easthampton, right, to access, you know, otherwise available services. So, you know,
I don't think I would agree with that, but
I kind of look at
that's not the time to
I
argue that.
personally look at this.
Says a lot about us.
Well, how do we prioritize, right? Like right now, we don't have a long-term capital plan.
Right.
We have big outlays.
Yeah.
And, you know, is this, you know, a really great thing for our senior residents? I think it is, but is it in the best interest in the town when we look at all the other unfilled needs, right?
Unfortunately, a lot of these things are coming together at the same time. I mean, this process started in 2021 for the senior center to start planning this and working on the feasibility study. So here we are 4 years later, and we haven't been able to move any farther than that. The public safety building started some 10 years ago. So, I mean, all these have been long-term things, and they are all coming together, unfortunately, at the same time as we're having issues with funding on the school. So yeah, it's not an ideal time. But if we don't do something now, the increase in costs are really going to be so astronomical that I don't think any building would ever get built, whether it's fire, police, or senior center.
Maybe one shouldn't be built.
That's somebody's opinion, not mine.
Can I ask about the timing? So was the senior center study prompted by the gift?
There had been a desire early on, had been identified that the senior center currently was not big enough, but they hadn't gone out for any kind of a feasibility study. So I think the donation probably helped push that notion of getting a feasibility study done to prove what they were feeling. Yeah, I would say that's probably true. The actual maximum capacity in that room is, I think, 70 or 75. So they had identified years ago that this was not big enough for the activities that they were doing, but they hadn't moved on doing a feasibility study because they didn't have any money to do it. So with the bequest, they were allowed $60,000 to do a feasibility study.
But then if we do go out to RFP and we bring on an OPM and a designer, we are signing contracts with both those firms for, you know what I'm saying? So then we're gonna borrow 12 million, we're gonna sign $2 million contracts, and then if this never takes off the ground, then we've just spent another $2 million
Which is why we're not asking just for, you know, we want to have the entire amount out there so that people understand that by using that money, we want to know that this money is going to be
So if they vote
forthcoming.
to approve this project's moving forward, full, because
It would
then we
take
would
the-
have the authorization
it would take
for
the
the
next
entire
steps.
project.
Right.
November,
At the
yeah.
station at
Yeah,
that point.
it would-
November has to go to the ballot.
Yeah, it's got to, right after the town meeting, it has to go to the ballot in November. So it could pass a town meeting, it could pass a town meeting, it's got to go to the ballot in November. We're looking at November 6th, I think it is, for a special election. If it doesn't pass at town meeting, it's dead in the water, just like public safety.
See, I would ordinarily say that voters should be able to decide on these things. I think they are, but I think we have a responsibility, at least the finance committee, I know we don't kill things, but I don't think we look very responsible if we're talking about spending $12 million and we can't even pay our bills today. It does, I mean, the select board can do what they want to do. If I was on the select board, I'd say let's not present it to the voters because it's, you know, we're going to lose our credibility by
So
going
if
out
not
to
now,
spend
then
so
when?
much money.
If not now, then when?
Never.
It may not be, you know, when. And the other thing is, if this squeaks through, what is like the voters' willingness to then fund a much-needed and long overdue, reduced, vision for a public safety complex? Or a school override when that comes through, because we have a big increase in special education funding needed. I think this potentially, we've seen that, the voters are not in support of an override. And if this gets, passed, right, because we have a certain amount of turnout in voters, it isn't necessarily proportional to the overall, which is a whole tax base. We may get told a lot more no in the future when we really need, the voters on our side to make much needed, contributions to the town. I think it's more than just, if we don't do this now, the senior center won't happen. It's also, what does this do to potential future decisions? And I think every time we go forward with a request like this, it potentially makes it harder for, future things that the town needs. I think there's an argument to be made that asking for, the large sum for the public safety complex is, a contributor to the override for the school not passing, right? So, it's not like this just impacts the senior center. This also impacts what the town can do going forward across the board.
Just part of the feasibility, and my apologies for not being familiar with it, collaborating with like another town. So we have a senior center director. As part of that director position, instead of this 12 million, if we pay the other senior center some money to help, they host our residents. We have a bus that comes from here to, there could be a much lesser cost if we collaborated with another town. I don't know if the feasibility study looked at that. Sometimes they do for small communities as a collaboration instead of a sole facility because it makes dollars and cents.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone was more familiar with the study that there was.
I wasn't on the feasibility committee. So. But the bus of PDTA, if that's what you're talking about, the Pioneer Valley Transit.
No. But if a smaller senior center operation with a director that facilitates a bus route and you know what I'm saying? We're looking at and then building this, so then what's our annual operating budget to support this new $12 million budget? We're looking at electricity. Yes, it's going to be all energy efficient and everything, but it's going to have to be staffed, the building. We're going to have to, all the programming, and that's where some other senior center directors have valuable information about annual operating costs.
I know they've
too.
been out and they visited various other senior centers. I don't know if they've gone to Holyoke, but they've been to the others.
We're a big one.
Various
I would
others,
look
I'm
at
sure.
little ones as,
Yeah.
But it's a lot. To piggyback on your point, it's a $12 million building, and then it's huge annual operating costs as well that have to be considered.
And Scott was talking about maybe 30 to 40,000, 50,000, maybe.
Yeah, just looking at the library expenses.
Just taking a comparison with the library as a standalone building. Right now it's hard to tell because it's one room in this big building, so you can't really siphon off what the costs really are for electricity, and Lord knows there's not a lot of efficiency in electricity. We have finally replaced the lights here, but yeah, so it's hard to tell what that is. It's projected, I guess I would say.
I think that was a good
One-time.
comparison, though, Scott.
So-
That was a good.
Scott, does this take into account construction inflation? Right, when we looked at some of the presentations for the public safety building, they had this like sort of Damocles hanging over, like if you wait a year, it's going to be another $5 million, and then another $5 million. They looked out, if you don't act on this until 5 years out, now the project's $55 million.
Yeah.
So is this 12 million based on a feasibility study from 2 years ago?
We
Updated
have an
cost.
updated cost analysis from, I think it was May, I think?
May, I believe it was.
May, so the cost estimator did reevaluate everything, and they do build in a 10% contingency fee for construction increases.
Knowing that nothing would really start until 2027 probably.
So they incorporated 2 years of potential, construction cost increases into this.
I believe so, yeah.
So in my opinion, senior centers are hugely important. I don't disagree with that at all. I think regionalization is a possibility. I think asking our seniors who live in this community to go down the road to someplace else is not something that I would be in favor of. I guess I feel like in another year, I would be totally behind this, but I am having, I think, reservations when I look at the safety complex, the state of our schools, and the budget that we're talking about in a year from now. Senior centers are not just a place where people play cards. These are community centers and also places where meals are served, not just to rich people, but people who actually need them. And
But rich people too.
Situation, I think that there'll be much more. And as we're going forward, it's gonna be more.
yeah.
People do need services. Everybody's not wealthy and retiring to Southampton. There are plenty of people still trying to stay in their homes, trying to maintain their family homes.
But they're also the same people that are gonna have their taxes go up. It's gonna make it harder to stay in those homes because they may or may not use this beautiful community center that we have. So it can go both ways. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
So, did you finish?
I think that that's just it. Senior centers are hugely important. They provide a service in towns. The staff do more than just, facilitate card games. But yeah.
They actually provided a valuable service for especially low-income seniors in terms of just explaining all the Medicare and insurance plans that are out there, the SHINE program, the
Farmers markets come in, there's all types of programming, and it's social too.
No, I mean, the social isolation factor is really a huge one, much more so than some of the programming.
Mental health services, there's all types of things that.
Yeah, it's a really important mental health resource.
I certainly, recognize all of those community benefits. The question is, how much of those needs are we not meeting without a $12 million borrowing, right?
We're only reaching a very small portion of the population, of the senior population, that's true.
But you're reaching everyone who cares to get involved.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of people that we're trying to reach through home visits, trying to get to come to here. A lot of people are proud, they don't like to come.
Well, it's not
They're
going to change with a massive
No, but
building.
it depends. I mean, once they see a neighbor or a friend coming, they get more convinced on coming. It depends on who and how the approach happens. And finding a variety of activities that attract people. They don't all come to every activity by any means. There's certain interests, obviously, that some people have. So, but I'm just saying that, all you've got to work with right now is a feasibility study that stays in feasibility study land and goes nowhere until a real architect can come in and work with it to cut around the edges, figure out what efficiencies there can be, how big a space needs to be, what shared space there can be. And we've been hoping to have it on the same property as the public safety building. So again, you're looking at shared parking lots, you're looking at other shared costs that would be very different from a standalone building, like the library, for example. So, I'm not saying that it's not going to be, an expensive cost, but I'm trying to look at the reality of 1/3 of our population right now, over about 2,200 residents, I think, are over 65 right now, and we've got another 1,000 that are turning 60 in the next year. So the population is getting more, it's an aging population, let's put it that way. And to serve only 75 people maximum, I think that's not what we should do. We're doing a disservice. So, anyway. I don't know if tonight was the night to really debate this. I mean, I don't know where we go with this. I mean, do we keep it on or take it on? I mean,
procedurally, do we, the finance committee, make a recommendation as a group to approve it or not? And then we say the vote?
Yes.
Because that's what happened with the last one. So I'd like to make a motion that we do not support Article 1.
I'm going to second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. No abstentions.
so what does that mean?
2-2.
I think it passes if it's 2-2.
Usually
Or-
fails.
Or it fails, okay, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, so it fails.
So on to number 2. News just keeps getting better. So this is the first step on paying for the health insurance costs. As I said before, it's probably going to cost closer to $350,000. This should at least get us until...
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Did the finance
I want to
committee
ask the same question.
fail to turn to make a negative recommendation, but did they make a positive recommendation? I didn't hear
They
that.
failed to support it.
They'll
So it'd be a
support
neg-
the article
yeah, it'd be a
itself.
negative recommendation.
But it would, it's printed out 2 to 2, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is-
So where it says on the bottom of the article, finance recommends or does
Right,
not
right.
recommend?
I thought the assumption was opposite or indefinite.
So Doug, I won't be at the meetings, so you'll have to defend.
Thanks, Rich.
No, tie votes are, tie votes
We're
are.
out of town.
I'm making friends everywhere.
So this would,
It wasn't clear to me that therefore they
Yeah.
had made any affirmative statement.
Okay.
So this is just to help offset the health insurance cost. As I mentioned before, it's probably gonna be closer to $350,000. This should be able to get us till annual town meeting, where we can look at potentially taking some out of free cash or other areas, and then kind of we'll have a better idea of what we're gonna be doing July 1st. We're also gonna be looking at, potentially the increases for our Medicare and the retiree costs. So I asked Bradley to look at all the sources that haven't been nailed down or committed yet. Even with that, these are a lot of, I hate to say it, but a lot of one-time fees that we're gonna be using to put towards a continuing cost.
So this is just a Band-Aid is what you're telling us?
It's a very big mandate. Operating is about $150,000. Capital, there's a lot of money, a lot of projects in capital that either haven't been completed or haven't been completed, a lot of offset money. So in October, I was going to zero most of the accounts that haven't been obligated and return that into the stabilization account. We have some things that are 2, 3, 4 years old in the capital stabilization that have just been sitting there, so we need to zero that out. Unfortunately, that's now going to be going towards health insurance costs if this passes.
But Scott, a lot of these, I mean, 5272 and $5, these are projects that have been done for the most part, and this is the remaining balance from what we approved at town meeting, is it not?
Yeah, so when we close out each year, we need to zero out a lot of these accounts that
So we haven't
have
been doing
remaining
that
balances,
process.
but they've been continuously on the books.
Right, but
So-
that doesn't mean that these things haven't already occurred. I mean, these
Right.
are not projects to be done.
Right. Yeah, there might be like some few, like the masonry costs and some other things, smaller ones. Like the library lighting, Joanne was able to get a grant, so that is the full amount.
So even though we had obligated it, it was not needing to be used. So these are either unused or not needed funds that came out of the capital account. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a situation where we need to claw back a lot of this money. Even this year's capital, if it hasn't been expended yet, I was recommending taking back. Most of the projects have already been done yet, though. Like I know the police has ordered cruisers, the work at North School have already been done, so there's not a lot of flexibility in that. We are in an emergency situation with this to not impact personnel costs.
But procedurally, why wouldn't you dump all of those into the capital stabilization fund and then make bulk transfer of whatever is needed out of the stabilization fund?
We could. I think this is just anytime that you remove money from a stabilization like a capital or operating, you need town meeting vote. So this just kind of shows better how it's done. I mean, realistically, all this money should have just been returned back to the capital stabilization fund.
That's what I'm saying, and I'm hung up on whether there's a meaningful distinction between us accessing operating funds versus stabilization funds.
Yeah, this looks like two things, right? This is funding the bill from, operating stabilization, but it's really also just cleaning up account balances that could have been year-end transfers.
That, I think, is a positive message, that we're house cleaning years of dreck and generating or liberating those funds.
Before the health insurance crisis, I did let all department head know that unless it was obligated by October, that all the monies were going to be returned back to stabilization funding. We're going to regroup to see how much we actually have in there.
This is process and communication, where the outcome is the same.
Pretty much.
I
Well,
thought,
but process and communication might carry the day.
I thought that if they weren't encumbered at the end of every year, then it automatically went back anyway.
It should be, but we haven't done
But it
that.
didn't.
So let me ask a specific question about the last item there, ambulance fees. So we know that the ambulance service actually operates at a deficit. So is this an accounting trick here, to a sense? Maybe that's not a fair comment, but if removing $50,000 from ambulance fees, but the overall ambulance program, operates at a deficit, is, removing funds, but does that mean that we're going to have, even larger of a deficit?
Currently, every fiscal year, we get a budget and we say, like, the ambulance and fire is this portion of the budget. So we're justified in taking this amount from the ambulance fees, so $150,000 or $100,000, however. And usually it's more than on the budget. Fire and ambulance is more than that $150,000. But we're taking from this revolving kind of account that every time an ambulance picks up a patient, brings them to the hospital, they get a fee. And then when there's an intercept fee of another town picks up our patient and they charge us $5,000, we pay out of this account. So currently there's, I forget what the actual balance was, but $150,000. And I said $50,000 would be safe to take out. But as you say, deficit of, there's an account that has a balance, and technically the budget demands $400,000 or something for ambulance and fire, and that account doesn't have that amount of money to pull out and cover. But we take out a portion of that to cover the budget. So it's not a trick, it's just...
And the balance is part of our general town budget. So the staff and the resources needed to continue to operate the ambulance are committed each year.
Yes, that's correct.
How we pay for it is what we're talking about. So dollars are fungible at the end of the day, but we're not going to back into laying off a full-time EMT.
Chris, is this the
I hope.
time that citizens speak can talk about a particular?
Sure, I just want to point out one thing. I'm looking at it, not sure, Bradley, on the revenue report, I'm looking at, that's just, no. I'm thinking about it, $329,000
I'd be
revenue?
looking at fiscal year 25.
Yeah.
And when we get into fiscal year 26, there's for the budget, we remove, I don't know what was voted on, $150,000.
Okay,
And so it goes down to $150,000.
all right, okay,
That's what the current balance was.
okay. Yeah, Kim, please, go ahead.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Kim Schott, I'm the chair of the school committee. I just want to confirm, so all of these things that are Norris, tied with Norris, these are funds that are left over from projects that were completed. I guess what I'm trying to find out, is Norris going to be missing out on having something done that needs to be done if we transfer these dollars?
Yeah, these are old that either haven't been used or have been expended.
Okay.
I mean, my philosophy is if it's been over a year to get a capital project done, it probably isn't that much of a priority.
As we discussed with Norris, and the projects we voted on from last town meeting, they already committed to paying, so we could not touch those.
But did Norris see any of, did anyone in administration see this list before you put it in the article that these funds are leaving? Or did they not have access to them anymore anyway, it's too much time to know that?
No, I had sent this out to all the department heads, including Norris.
Okay. All right, so Norris, as far as you're concerned, isn't missing out on something by
And-
doing these transfers?
And a lot of these, I mean, especially like the structural repairs, that's going to be part of the bigger capital project for the upcoming fiscal year.
So does that mean there are structural repairs for $18,875 that we need to have done that now we're not going to have done because we're losing this money?
That'll be wrapped, I know that Tom had requested $50,000 for this fiscal year for structural repairs. So whether it's $50,000 or $68,000, I think it would have to be built into the capital this year.
Okay, thank you.
So while that one might say that that amount is superseded by a new proposal in the works, the others are really unspent funds that you're liberating. And so that's 3 green check marks for good housekeeping. And I think that comes before and is independent of, to some degree, funding the 318,000.
I will kind of skip ahead to Article 12, which is the Water Department Fund, as a Water Commissioner. So last year, Brad and I, we worked on at least just identifying a lot of accounts that are just, we have dozens and dozens of accounts that are just sitting there. It could be $100, it could be $20,000. So we looked at, yeah, exactly, at the stabilization for capital, and we also looked at a lot of these other things. It just takes so much time to go through each one, whether it's a donation to the DARE program from 5 years ago. We got to make sure that we properly get rid. How do we dispose of that money? Do we just transfer it to the general fund, or does it have to go back to the, I think it was the PTO chief?
It was a PTO.
You know, do they want the funds back now that we no longer utilize the DARE program? So it's looking and doing research for each individual one, whether it's a grant or a gift or something just out there. It's just time consuming. And that's one of the things that we found with our free cash flow. We were hit with $60,000 deficit this year based on a water project from 2022 that exceeded the grant that we received by $60,000. I don't know exactly what happened. We're still trying to unravel it. But the town paid for that $60,000 where it should have went towards the Water Enterprise Fund. So we worked with Brett. Brett researched it himself. He wasn't here either. So, but it did look like it should have been put towards the Water Enterprise Fund. So we're going to be getting that $60,000 back. Unfortunately, it requires a special town meeting vote to do that, and we can't use that against this cost until that's done.
Can I ask, sorry, about the Board of Health fees? I feel like this is a place where we've put money in, we've moved money around, we've put money here, there, whatever. We do have 17,000 in fees that we think we can put towards this?
Yeah, that's from the old revolving account from last year.
Okay.
It was a 1-year experiment to see how, like, if it was a good revolving and good idea, good for revenue and other things, but money went into this account and built up. I was pretty confident in 17,000 is at least in there at the end of fiscal year 25. So since we haven't approved that revolving fund for fiscal year 26, it's just going to sit there. So we need to remove it.
And we did budget for Charlie's position, the additional health agent, so they actually have a line item in the budget this year to be paying out.
Because that would be, tried to be paid out of the revolving fund last year, right?
Yeah.
So that is not actually needed at this point in time? Yeah. The other one though, general highway wages. So I know Randall has hired a couple of his people, but there were at least 2 more vacancies. And does this represent then that his holding off on any new hiring? Is that what that comes from?
Pretty much, he won't be able to hire anymore for those, about one mechanic and one other. We funded one position at 50%, assuming he would have filled it in January. So that would not be filled, and the mechanic position would not be filled.
Well, back in June, we also did a year-end transfer, which was about $80,000 for an unbudgeted, road resurfacing project for seal coating, right? I think Pleasant Street was one of the, streets that were seal coated. And one of the concerns we raised, not specifically to that project, but just generally as the finance committee was, taking these, budgeted wages and moving them to like unplanned construction projects, right? So that, you have 50,000 here, but you also had the 80,000 that, was put towards those resurfacing contracts. So I guess it raises the point that, coming up in this upcoming budget session, season, we really need to fine tune these wages so that we're not, budgeting funds that can go elsewhere and they're just going to go unspent and then used in ways that we didn't really, plan ahead for.
I mean, specific to the highway, we've been pretty successful in recruiting people. So it is kind of a blow to that department not being able to fill that position. It would have been the first time in probably about 9 or 10 years that they would have been fully staffed.
Fully staffed, yes.
In the last position, we had multiple candidates that were very well qualified.
Scott, did you say that this does not include Hampshire Regional?
It does not.
And we'll see that.
Probably in a couple months.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we support, oh, can I ask one more question? We have to do this. We really don't have any choice. We gotta find the money somewhere.
The only other option would be we'd have to reduce and transfer money from other sources in the FY26 budget, which would more than likely be personnel reductions.
So I'd like to make a motion that we support Article 2.
Motion seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, none abstained.
Article 3 is updates to our Personnel Policy and Procedure Board. This is a step of updating, professionalizing, and kind of bringing town government into the 21st century. It's not necessarily a financial thing for the FinCom, but currently, in order to hire someone, we have to have the department head has to meet with me, get an advertisement ready, get that approved by the PQB, advertise it, hire a candidate, go back to the PQB, get that approved, then go to the select board, get that approved, and 9 months later we have a new employee.
Actually goes to FinCom as well.
And FinCom, yeah.
And FinCom.
I'm sorry, I forgot. So there are some issues with that. It just adds another layer without a lot of value to it. We've also had 2 town employees sit on the personnel board, so not only are they voting on their compensation, but also the policies that would impact them. The value added isn't, I don't think, is as much as it could be. And most towns have eliminated that, at least to be, if you do have a personnel board, usually it's more general and more broad, so they're just working on personnel policies, or just general wage things. They're not getting into the weeds and actually approving candidates for specific positions. So, I mean, sometimes it can delay the hiring process by months. If it's not scheduled appropriately, it doesn't align with the meeting, if it doesn't have a quorum, and it's another elected board, which hasn't been fully, hasn't had a full board, I think, in a number of years. Right now, I think there's only 3 people, so John Lumbra,
Your first name.
and one other.
Becky.
I'm sorry, Becky.
From
yeah.
finance.
And one, yeah. So if there's not one person is missing, then it can delay. And people have options. The economy is still strong. If you don't hire and get someone, they're going to be looking at other options. So my recommendation is kind of the first step in looking at more and more each year and looking at updating town government is to eliminate the PQB. I mean, other things that we're going to be looking at, I mean, my recommendation is to make the treasurer collector and the town clerk appointed rather than elected. There's also another thing, a lot of towns will rely on the town moderator to appoint people rather than to elect them. That does help streamline government. It's almost like 2 branches of government. You have the town moderator appointing, certain positions into the select board, so it kind of balances out with the FinCom. But ultimately, I think this is the first step rather than doing a complete charter change, which can take years, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours, and then fail before the voters. So I think looking at individual things and streamlining it is probably the best approach. And this is really the first step. And that goes along with Article 3. So Article 3 is essentially eliminating the bylaw. Article 4 is replacing what was there, and this was written by town council. It does allow it to continue on because it is elected. So once the terms are up, then it would be eliminated. So it would essentially be eliminated by annual town meeting.
So I don't think we need to take any position on that.
You can.
It's not financially related, we don't need to. But the board, so what happens, I agree that that board does not need to be involved in sort of the day-to-day stuff that happens, but what happens with the overarching things? So like if there's a new classification system or any of those things that are happening, is there not now another entity that is working on that?
That would just fall to the select board. So the select board essentially takes over. They sort of are already. So the select board, the PQB recommends to the select board, and the select board adopts. So it would just go right to the select board.
So anybody who's elected and currently on the PQB would still stay on until their term expires.
Exactly.
And I think that's actually only one person.
And we wouldn't fill the vacancies.
But essentially, we're not doing any work now, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you want to. No, I mean,
Let's turn into some meetings.
No, I don't think so.
The next one is a transfer for the Conservation Commission. So last year we were able to budget the land use planner and economic development coordinator position, which we funded at 3/4 time. With everything going on, it would have added, again, additional benefit cost of, you know, a family going to be $27,000. So until we figure out what we're going to be doing, that position was going to eliminate the Conservation Commission agent, as well as take on the work for the planning department, help with zoning, help with some of the Board of Health issues, really coordinate all those efforts, anything to do with planning, land use, grants, things like that, greenways, all that stuff. Unfortunately, I think that we need to kind of hold off on a little bit. So this would continue to fund the conservation agent for another 3 months through January. And this is,
The land use coordinator would have also covered the Concom functions though too. We can't have a conservation commission without somebody managing that, right? So-
it's one of the problems that we have. So, you know, our planning board, you know, they do a lot of work. They have a consultant, but they're volunteers, and there's just too much work for that to continue. So we need professional help for our boards to take over the day-to-day stuff.
So this would get us 3 months more until just through December, basically?
And decide what we do after that, whether or not we fill it or not.
So I'll make a motion for the Finance Committee support Article 5.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So next up is a transfer for a health agent. So Claudia was actually hired after the budget process. She's extremely well qualified. She's doing an amazing job. It was agreed to bring her on at the higher salary. So this was, again, taken from the land use coordinator. This would make up for the deficit right now that's in that salary account.
I'll make a motion that we support number 6.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is the Finance Committee. So as we talked about before, this would be appointing rather than electing by the town moderator, and it would be staggering them off. So as people in their term, they could continue, but it would be a town moderator appointment. This is similar to what most other municipalities in Massachusetts do, rather than elected. I mean, I do think electing, we have a lot of elected boards. It can be, being an elected official can have a term that people may not want to volunteer for. So I think that being more appointed might be more appealing to get people involved.
So what's the theory between having people appointed by the select board versus the town moderator?
The select board is, the FinCom is supposed to be the opposite of the select board. So, you know, House of Representatives and the Senate, it's supposed to be two separate but equal things. So if the select board appointed it, would kind of make
Gives a little bit more arm's length, you know?
The process would be the same, so an application and then reviewed by only the town moderator?
And does the town moderator then have to recruit? Would that be,
Well, I think there would be people lining up now.
See that.
After this presentation, can't wait to get on.
This is the first meeting where there's more finance committee members than select board members.
Yeah, that's quite true. It's quite true, yeah.
so is it appropriate for us to support or not support this?
Although it's not financial, I definitely think that there should be input.
Yeah. That's true. It's
I'll put a little
anyway,
asterisk
so we
there.
wouldn't, yeah, we wouldn't anyway.
I don't know if in reality this will change the amount of people stepping up, to sit on the finance committee. If it does, I think that's great. I think there is some, state ethics rules, considerations, for elected officials versus appointed that are preferable. I wonder a little bit on the optics, right? We have all these financial challenges and we're moving, to a form of not stagnant, but like the composition of the finance committee is now a little less accountable to the voters. Arguably, right? As our terms come up, right? You could have disapproval of the finance committee amongst the voters, but it really lies now with the town moderator.
I think it might, not saying that you're not great FinCom, but looking forward, it's the qualifications of getting elected is putting up enough lawn signs or votes versus a process where the town moderator can actually vet, interview, look at the resume, and kind of decide who might be best qualified for the position.
I would say that that's not much different from the way that we've, filled the positions in FinCom now. So yes, they've been elected positions, but we've often filled them initially from appointments from the select board, and then just based on the amount of participation from the town, we've all run unopposed.
And there's so many other boards, pond committee, why don't we appoint that? There's, to your point, there are a lot, I couldn't believe the ballot, and not for nothing, when I voted, I thought anyone that got enough signatures to get on the ballot deserved my vote if they were running unopposed, because at least they did the legwork.
The things are not all about the caucus. They're all things, they go to a caucus.
Yeah, you go to the caucus as well. So, in reality, it's, at least for the past few years that I've participated, it's just being willing to, fill the position has been really what, determines whether you end up on, FinCom or some of these other committees. I'm not opposed to this. I'm just trying to think through, the optics of removing from the voters, their choice in, just who makes it onto the board.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other positions where, you really only need, I think, 1 or 2 votes to be elected. So, you can have somebody, we've had people in the past where people at the caucus just throw out somebody's name and nominate Joe Schmo down the road. So then it goes for the town clerk. She's got to call this person and figure out, and she's like, who the hell nominated me? I don't have any interest. So, we spend a lot of time going through that where it feels like, I could be wrong, that this could be a little bit more structure-based in terms of getting people on by at least outlining expectations of what the FinCom has to do and the important role that it plays, and looking for people that have got the interest and the motivation and the background that can feed into that. Whereas sometimes for elected officials, you really don't need to have any qualifications specified. You can just be my next door neighbor or something. I think it brings it to a different level, I think. I hear what you're saying though, Doug, but it feels like it ought to at least put a different perspective on it, but it's probably got both sides. Yeah, I don't know. So.
If it's going to be more qualifications based, then I would support it. That's my, to piggyback on what you said. I'm looking for I know we're moving towards that, but the treasurer collector, in my opinion, it should be appointed, not elected, because they're handling all of our money. They can make a $50 million transfer and they have no financial background. I'm all for qualifications.
And they're not answerable to the select board even.
And they don't even have to show up to work, technically. They're, the state auditor oversees their.
Sure, yeah. So I think there's pros and cons to all of this, but I think this kind of follows suit with, that notion of just trying to sort of up the ante a little bit and be a bit more professionally organized in some ways. There is actually, we don't need to talk, I think if we want to move forward, this one's fine. There was from the Bylaw Advisory Committee, which I'm on, we had drafted an update to the finance bylaw probably about a year ago, and I think when Donna was still on the board, and I don't know that it ever got reviewed or it never got back to bylaws if it was. So this is actually reflecting, I think, the current bylaw that's on the books. It doesn't reflect the one that we had worked to modify. But if we wanted to take a step forward, you know, given our timing, we may as well go forward with it.
Language.
I think
Yeah.
Doug was on when I
Okay.
came through too.
Yeah. So, I mean, this would at least be a step forward. We can pick up the other one and, you know, relook at it. It's a bit more detailed and explicit, probably in terms of roles and responsibilities than this is right now. But this would at least move it forward.
I guess one more question, then I'll be quiet. So if we look across some of the other boards and the other positions that are elected, right? So we're taking, you know, this opportunity to, you know, update, you know, the finance committee and that in its, you know, manner of filling the committee. You know, why just the finance committee now? Why not the treasurer position? Why not, you know, while we're doing this? I guess why just the FinCom committee right now?
So by law, we can't convert the treasurer, collector, and town clerk position to appointed until the annual town election.
Okay.
So, and there's a lot of other boards and committees and positions that we need to look at as well, like the tree warden being elected, and capital committee is appointed, but I think we need to look, you know, this is just our dipping our toe in the water.
Okay.
It's just the first step.
Okay.
Do we want to
Do you want
make a
to
recommendation on that?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think we need to. I mean, I guess in the minutes.
I wonder if people would be curious as to what the finance committee thought about.
Our future fate.
Yeah, I think as a committee, if we're in favor of this, it may lend some weight, you know, at the special town meeting. That the current, you know, members of the committee are in favor of this change.
So maybe that could be the statement rather than a finance committee supports or does not support. Maybe we could modify the language under the article or something.
Or you can just go to the meeting and speak in support or oppose.
That too.
I'm kind of indifferent, so I'd go either way.
I know,
I guess I feel like we can make a statement. We don't typically vote on by
Yeah,
stuff. So.
yeah, that's fine.
So what would the statement be?
Thumbs up and a wink.
Okay. Moving
I'll
on.
write mildly support.
I'm in support of a qualifications-based process.
Generally support? I mean, whatever. I don't know. Whatever you want to say. Okay.
So the next couple ones are approvals for the acquisition of two parcels of property. The first one is a Trinseri.
Correct.
Missed that. So this would allow $50,000 from the CPC budget to be used for the purchase of
40 acres.
40 acres. And then that would be matched with a amount of $50,000 from the Kestrel Trust. So no money would be expended until Kestrel provides the $50,000. So total price would be $100,000, 50-50 from town CPC and Kestrel Trust.
Oh, okay, I didn't understand that. I thought we were spending 50 and then getting reimbursed.
Yeah, I think I think it's only 50.
50 total,
It's 50 total.
and this covers, I think, the logistics. If Kestrel doesn't receive it on their account and give the title to us, they could
Yeah.
give us the acquisition funds to go forward and buy it. We'd have to have this authority to use acquisition funds gifted from Kestrel. But the
So you're saying
total,
we'd be reimbursed in
Yeah.
that scenario?
the total project expenses would be no more than 50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at unless 50,000 is received, so if we don't receive the $50,000 gift from Kestrel, the town won't be out any
Won't be out,
funds.
right.
And I think with the $50,000, I think there may be some incidentals, maybe survey costs or you know, actual legal costs at closing, but those would be, my understanding is small.
I think it's most likely that it'll only be the incidentals that are actually run through the town's books.
Yeah.
So it's not 100,000.
No, the actual purchase price
Not
is
100,
50.
and probably not the stated, well,
Yeah.
whatever the stated consideration to the grant for. We're probably going to pick up recording fees and legal expense out the deed review.
Yeah.
Does it say in here it's going from CPC?
To say what?
That it's coming from CPC?
Conservation.
The article itself is being put forth by the Open Space Committee, but
But it doesn't say with 50,000.
to meet the appropriation of 50,000,
The
Correct.
community preservation.
it sounds like they're really counting on Kestrel to come up with the 50,000, because CPC is not mentioned anywhere in there, right?
We'll find it.
Maybe hop to the next one, because there's another one, and how does that one?
Review contrast, yep.
So that one is definitely from community preservation. So my thinking, I wish Mark were around. My thinking is that they're really counting on Kestrel to come forward with that.
And that understanding has
50.
existed for many months.
Yeah,
But wouldn't we have to say where the 50 is coming from?
Well, it says the town.
Town.
It says the town versus CPC.
But it also makes it contingent on receiving the funds. So I don't think this
Yeah.
isn't a reimbursement. This is, we get the gift, we've authorized the
Yeah.
select board to execute the.
we're able to accept the
Yeah.
gift. If we get the gift, we're authorized to accept it, but,
Not be expended unless the town is received.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is not a reimbursement. This is an upfront receipt of the gift.
That's how it reads, you're right.
yeah,
In contrast to the next one.
yeah,
The next two.
yeah,
to-
okay.
So, just to clarify, so it's $50,000. We get the 50,000, then we give it, or we give it and then we wait for.
We get the gift of $50,000 and we use that to make the land acquisition.
Okay.
Mhm.
So,
Or
Or nothing.
we have
Or not.
$15,000 worth of expenses and they write us a check to cover that.
In order to get the gift though, do we have to accept it? Like, so if Kessler's gonna give us the gift, don't we as a body have to accept the gift? Or,
This is needed to accept the title to the land, and I think the language about
The very-
gift is there.
The very first
Okay.
sentence, yeah, for purpose of acquiring by purchase or gift. Purchase, gift, eminent domain or otherwise.
B is really the source
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah,
so
but I think this is the acceptance of
Okay,
of a
okay,
gift.
okay.
I mean, I think that's the gist of this whole article. So a little
She
fuzzy.
relies on B.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
do we, as a finance committee, have a role in these transactions? Should we make recommendations?
Typically, if it comes from CPA funds, we haven't voted or made recommendations.
Mhm.
And where do the CPA funds come from? They're collected on
Surcharge.
Surcharge.
Surcharge on the real estate taxes.
on real estate taxes themselves, not transfers.
But they're restricted funds,
Yeah.
so.
So we can't use those to fill any budget shortfalls?
We cannot, even though we will bring that up at every time.
No, unfortunately. They're kind of stuck.
I was guilty of that. I think I had something to say about a pickleball court.
So we're not going to make a recommendation?
I'm trying to think if we've ever had you guys,
Because, I mean, this one is covered, the next one is covered, and the third one appears to be the second one not covered, so they could actually be out the funds, if I'm reading that correctly.
yeah, so number 9 is the Floric property, and this is contingent on getting
It's a state land grant,
the
right?
state land grant, and then the other one is moving forward
Even if we don't.
the same
even if
without
we don't
getting the
get
land grant. Yeah.
So is one to assume then that the Conservation Committee in town or whatever has $426,000 in the bank?
There are funds in the
Yeah.
buckets that would fund this, in the
Yeah.
CPA funds.
and does their board have to vote to allow that authorization first, and they have, so they've already voted?
Yes.
Okay.
they've already voted.
So that's not us.
No, I know.
I'm going to ask a very politically incorrect question. Is it possible to opt out of the conservation schematic where we do no longer collect the money and no longer purchase conservation?
Take a vote at town meeting.
I think that also the voters for CPC.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd have to be town meeting, and then the voters would have to go back and repeal going into the
I think we could
CPC.
wrap it up. I mean,
Or adjust it.
Or, yeah, I think,
Yeah,
what
We're
is
at
it,
3%.
Yeah.
so if we're talking about tax implications for things, I think that's something to think about. I don't think we just should say it's sacred. It probably isn't sacred, I think. There are people in town that would say, oh, well, if it's gonna drop my taxes, I'm fine with this.
So the account balances, as we touched on previously, are
Are off
sacred.
limits, yeah.
But
But the future for tax.
you're not wrong to raise the question. We're at the maximum allowed under the enabling statute, 3%
3%.
surcharge.
And it's not just one bucket, it's not just the conservation. There's three different
Yeah.
areas in which you can spend.
Each is
the money.
treated equally, affordable housing and historic preservation.
Okay. You gonna work on that, Scott?
Me.
Feels to me like a few years ago, there was a move to lower that percentage from 3%, and it did not pass.
Failed.
Yeah. I don't remember what the actual language or timing was, but
Would that be a town meeting vote, or
Yeah.
would it be a vote?
town meeting,
Yeah, so that's an issue.
yeah.
Yeah, it would start at town meeting. It'd have to be approved for voters.
But that would be it, though, and you wouldn't have to vote it through a ballot. I think the outcome might be different on a ballot than it would be a town meeting.
So
I
do
haven't
we,
looked at that for a while. So.
do we need to have,
I don't think we need to have a vote, no.
Yeah, that would be out of our,
right, so this is definitely from CPC funding is what this is looking for. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of them.
so right now, Reggie, there's, in the undesignated, there's about, 730,000. I think across the board, there's like 1.5 million CPA funds, plus FY26 revenue.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
one could argue that if we collected those in taxes directly, that we could use them for other purposes, or you could cut the taxes of individual homeowners, and maybe they'd be more willing to pay into some other things.
Those are accumulated unspent
For
balances.
a while.
Yeah.
Over a number of
Yeah,
years.
number of years, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, next.
Next.
So we can take positions on those.
Did you need to on that last
I
one?
don't think so.
No.
No, because that was
Yeah,
CPC money,
CPC.
right, on that last one? Yeah, okay.
Next is just to pay a previous fiscal year outstanding balance for legal fees for Sedell and Sedell. You're handling one of our delicate problem properties.
I'll make a motion that we support the transfer.
All in favor?
Aye.
And last but not least is the transfer of money from the retained earnings in the water department to their enterprise fund line. Excuse me. And that's to offset the deficit from the FY22 project that I had mentioned earlier.
So to clarify, Scott, this is $60,000 from the water department retained earnings.
So they're going to transfer that from retained earnings to their enterprise fund line and then transfer that to the town.
Would be transferred to the grant account that's over.
Or, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it requires this body's vote because it's a revolving enterprise, it's a money-bringing account.
So this is only step one.
Right, but you don't need town meeting to do from the enterprise line to the grant account though. Right, Brad? Pretty sure.
Not familiar with these types of transactions, but I think it would just be an expense out of their operating expense line to the grant account.
But then the grant is, it's already been closed and paid off, I mean, the money eventually ends up in the town general fund, right?
Well, right now it's a Fund 24 account with a negative $60,000 deficit. So we need to transfer $60,000 to make it zero.
Okay.
So no longer.
But when you say it goes into the grant account, the grant is over and done with.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just maintain that negative balance.
yeah.
You can spend the water money.
Yeah, so there's no actual cash outlay here. We're just cleaning up the account balance.
Mhm.
This is more of an inter-account transfer.
Well, they have, yeah,
It
there is
will, yeah.
cash, right?
Yeah, we did pay $60,000 back.
It's not a future outlay.
No.
No.
Right now, we're just moving the debits and credits to zero out this,
Right.
this balance,
Correct.
this negative balance.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
So,
And the commissioners have voted to approve the amount and the source.
So there's a water projects account that they could have used, but I recommended that they not use it because there was only $70,000 available, so it would have completely depleted it, in my opinion. So I recommend retained earnings, that they have quite a bit of retained earnings to use.
so I'll make a motion to support.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Okay. That's the end of that. Wow,
The end.
the end. So I think, one of the things that I know, I think you're still working on the actual summaries and motions. I would like to suggest from the select board side that we not vote on this tonight, but that we wait till we have the full package that has the summaries and motions.
Okay.
But remind me when this has to be posted, because we post the warrant without the summaries and motions.
September 15th, because it's 2 weeks before. You have
So
to get
we're the 9th
posted.
today. So I guess the question, you're gonna be heading out of town.
I am also, I leave on a cruise
You're heading
tomorrow.
out, yeah. John is gonna be back in, well, this will be for select board stuff,
Okay.
yeah.
Our job
All right.
is.
So, Ellen, you're back in town.
All right. No.
So Ellen's back, Steven's leaving, I'm here, John is in transit.
Should be back in a day or two, I think.
I'm hoping so. Or we could do a Zoom. You're gonna be far away? Okay. Well,
I mean,
okay.
I can definitely get, I mean, if Ellen's okay, I can get John, you, and Ellen on a Zoom
Yeah.
at any
Well, I guess
time.
the only, we don't, when we post the warrant, so the constable has to post the warrant in 6 places,
Mhm.
whatever, far ahead. We don't have the summaries and motions in that anyway, so we've essentially gone through this tonight. There's no wording changes.
Shouldn't be, no.
Okay, I'll rescind what I was just talking about then. Since we have our quorum here for select board, it may be easier to do that. I would like us, though, to somehow, because we're not meeting again until the 23rd,
Mhm.
because we canceled our meeting on the 16th. So,
Yeah, my next step would be to finish the summaries, motions, and
right, so we
bring it
definitely
to all
want
the
to see all
FinCom,
that.
select board, and all the
Yeah.
department heads, yeah.
Okay, all right, I guess I'll take a motion then based on all this discussion tonight about, we've closed the warrant, so we would need a motion to post the warrant
Mhm.
in time, sufficient time for the special town meeting on September 30th. Correct?
Yeah.
Is what we need.
Approve and post.
Would somebody approve and, make a motion to that effect, sorry.
I move that we timely post the warrant for the special town meeting.
I'll second that.
That was second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, okay. So, motion passes. So this will have the actual recommendations or silence,
Mhm.
as it may be, on the posting as well. So you'll
Yep.
add that in before posting it.
And, you know, the 2/3 majority,
Right,
all that
okay.
stuff too, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think that's,
So our action is to forward each of these, the totality of the warrant with the recommendations of the Finance Committee. We have not ourselves, as a body, voted to endorse each item.
that's true. Did we have to do that? I'm sorry.
I hope not.
Do we have to
Take
go
a
through each
motion
one?
and take them up as a package?
Really? I mean, we've heard the discussion, you know.
No, I think we've done what's required.
Right,
But I prefer to the moderator and the town administrator.
I mean, you can certainly take them up as a package. I thought approving it and posting it is, I mean, it's not really endorsing, it's just a matter of moving it forward.
That's exactly the distinction. I vote to move it forward.
Okay, so are we amending the motion a little bit? Is that what we're doing?
No, it's correct in
Mhm.
posting
It's okay.
it.
Post,
Mhm.
post warrant.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, fine.
If you don't want to post or move forward a specific warrant, that's one thing. but I think as a whole.
So
it's-
I'm going to reiterate my position some time ago when the senior center building committee presented to us and said, we, notwithstanding the failure of the public safety building votes, we want to move forward. And we want to move forward at the special town meeting, not the annual town meeting. And I took the position that, yeah, the people ought to have a vote. And there have been years and years of really thoughtful, hard work going into it. Can it be improved? I'm sure. But what do we do to keep the flame alive? So I'm in favor that voters should be able to vote. I think that the world has changed enormously since we had our annual town meeting in May. And I think all the discussion about what do we do first, second, and third is critical. And I want to say what sometimes causing us heartburn, but it's also causing us not to be able to answer important questions. We're working on cleaning house, and it is years overdue, and it is frustrating, and we ought to have answers that we don't have. I'd love to look at the finished 10-year capital plan that makes sure that the bread and butter issues that come in small denominations and the big denominations that aren't as concrete as a public safety building or a senior center. You know, next time we need to have breathing apparatus. I know we just did that, but you can't send firefighters into a burning building without breathing apparatus. Some of this stuff, that's the bread and butter that we need to be taken care of. The school operating costs is something we need to be taken care of. And still, let the voters have their say. Keep the flame alive. We will come out of this mess.
Okay, so I think we are okay with moving forward, posting the
I am.
warrant. Okay, good. Anything else, Scott? Is that the end of our agenda? It's been quite a heavy-duty meeting. I really thank everybody for chiming in and being here and, you know, giving some very thoughtful, persuasive arguments one way or t'other. And, you know, it's good to have these kind of meetings. So I really hope this is the first of a set of quarterly meetings. I think this has got to be routine. I think it will help us all manage town finances a whole lot better. There's so much more to be done to, you know, just finish cleaning up some of the stuff that just lagged for the last 5 years or so. And I think, you know, Bradley and now Megan and Scott have been really trying to do their best to scrub the books and find some extra pennies here and there. And, you know, I think we just need to close out some of these accounts and move forward. So thanks to all the work that's been put into that. I think the capital book will be a huge undertaking. As I think I said, we've known that the various departments have had at least a 5-year plan. Some have tried to do a 10-year plan, but in many ways I think that's really not as realistic as just having a 5-year plan, but they have been very siloed. And
Yes.
I think the voters have been correct that, you know, at a town meeting when we only have X amount of money for capital, we say, okay, well, we're going to do, you know, carpet and, you know, whatever, 5 more things, and because that's all the money we've got. And so the voters never know what to expect in terms of capital items coming at them. And this, I think, will be a good idea to show them how we can schedule it. First of all, what the items are. Having, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's not easy to get the whole book put together and have a photo of everything, but it really will help us, I think, you know, help the voters understand what's out there that we need to, you know, look at replacing. I
We've
mean,
got a lot of photos.
yeah, well, there you go, okay.
I don't
So
think people have a real good grasp of things. For instance, that a dump truck costs $400,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Or an
Yeah,
ambulance costs.
Sure.
What it costs. I
Yeah.
don't think people have any idea about
yeah, no, I mean, the costs are just, you know, yeah, it's
putting it
astronomical.
in front of them, you know,
Right.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, we will, you know, make headway on that. I think that'll be a good thing to have going forward. So I think this will really set us off in a good direction. So let's hope we can follow this budget calendar. We may need another meeting in between time for that, before we have our actual, I think you said a December quarterly meeting. Sorry, another December one. But, if you want to put forward on the budget calendar and any work that we need to do jointly on that, we will call a meeting in that regard. But other words, I will take a motion for FinCom if you'd like to go ahead and dissolve your meeting or whatever you need to do.
We're actually going to take a few minutes just to approve the minutes from the
Okay.
last few meetings.
That's fine. So you may continue on. Select Board, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn at 8:12.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are adjourned at about 8:12. Thank you very much.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.